the day my mother-in-law learned who really owned her house. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a canceled contract, then another, and another. By the end of the week, half of my event planning business's clients had mysteriously pulled out, all citing the same vague concerns about reliability and financial stability. I knew exactly who was behind it. "Susan's been busy," I muttered, staring at yet another cancellation email. My assistant Mia looked up from her desk, her expression grim. "Your mother-in-law?" she asked, though we both knew the answer. I turned my laptop around to show her the latest email. She convinced the Carters to cancel their son's engagement party. That's the third major event this month. "My name is Olivia Carter, and for the past 2 years, I've run one of Denver's most successful boutique event planning companies. Or at least, I did until my mother-in-law, Susan Caldwell, decided to destroy everything I built. It all started after her son, my husband, Ethan, died in a tragic accident 8 months ago. Susan had never approved of me, convinced I had married Ethan for his family's wealth. The fact that I had signed a prenup and built a thriving business on my own meant nothing to her. In her eyes, I was the gold-digging outsider who didn't deserve a place in her family. But sabotaging my business? That was a new low, even for her. "We need to do something," Mia said, her voice tight with anger. "She can't just get away with this." I smiled, thinking about the thick envelope sitting in my desk drawer. "Don't worry, she won't." What Susan didn't know, what no one knew except my lawyer, was that 6 months ago, I purchased her beloved mansion at a private auction. The Caldwell estate, a sprawling Tudor-style home that had been in their family for generations, was secretly mortgaged years ago by Susan's late husband to cover bad investments. When the bank foreclosed and put it up for auction, I had been there, bidding through a shell company. Susan had no idea she was essentially living in my house. Just then, my phone buzzed. Speak of the devil. "Hello, Susan," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Olivia, dear," she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I just heard the most disturbing news about your little business. Clients dropping like flies? How unfortunate." I could practically hear the smirk in her voice. "Yes, it is rather unfortunate," I replied calmly. "I don't suppose you'd know anything about that?" She let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, please, don't blame me for your incompetence. I simply shared my concerns with a few friends. If they chose to take their business elsewhere, well, that's hardly my fault." "Of course not," I said, gripping the pen in my hand a little tighter, "though I do have to wonder why you're so invested in seeing me fail." "Invested?" she scoffed. "Don't flatter yourself. I just think it's time you accepted reality. Without Ethan's name, without his family's influence, you're nothing. You should have taken the money I offered and left town after the funeral." Oh yes, her so-called generous offer. A check for $300,000 if I agreed to leave Denver and never come back. I had torn it up in front of her. "I'm not going anywhere, Susan," I said firmly. "This is my home, my business, my life." "We'll see about that," she snapped before hanging up. I set my phone down, my hands shaking slightly from anger. Mia watched me carefully. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I reached for my desk drawer and pulled out the envelope. "I'm going to remind Susan that actions have consequences." Inside the envelope was a notice of eviction, prepared by my lawyer and ready to be served. According to the terms of the auction sale, Susan had been allowed to remain in the mansion as a tenant, paying rent to what she thought was a faceless investment firm. But that arrangement could be terminated at any time. And after everything she had done, it was time for Susan to learn exactly who owned her house. With 30 days' notice, I had been holding on to the eviction papers, waiting for the perfect moment. And now, Susan had just handed it to me on a silver platter. "Mia," I said, standing up, "cancel my afternoon appointments. I need to see my lawyer." An hour later, I sat in James Chen's office, watching as he reviewed the eviction notice. "Everything's in order," he said, looking up at me. "But are you sure about this? Once we serve the notice, there's no going back. Susan will know you own the house." I thought about all the clients she had scared away, the lies she spread about my business, the years of snide comments and barely veiled insults. "I'm sure," I said firmly. "It's time Susan learned she can't bully people without consequences." James nodded, reaching for his phone. I'll have the process server deliver it first thing tomorrow morning. You might want to be somewhere public when she gets it. I smiled grimly. Oh, I know exactly where I'll be. The next morning, I sat at my favorite cafe, sipping my coffee and waiting. The process server was scheduled to deliver the notice at 9 a.m. sharp. It was now 9:05. Right on cue, my phone exploded with notifications. First, the text messages, all caps full of rage. How dare you? This is impossible. You sneaky little witch. Then, the phone calls, which I let go to voicemail. Finally, an email arrived. You think you're clever, don't you? Buying my family's home through some shell company? This is a new low, even for you. But if you think I'm going to let you get away with this, you're sadly mistaken. I have friends in high places, connections you couldn't even imagine. By the time I'm done with you, you won't be able to plan a child's birthday party in this town. I calmly forwarded the email to James, adding it to our growing file of Susan's threats and interference. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had been saving for just this moment. Hello, Richard. It's Olivia Carter. Remember that exclusive interview you wanted about Susan Caldwell's financial scandal? Richard Chen, no relation to my lawyer, was an investigative reporter who had been trying to expose the Caldwell family's hidden financial troubles. Until now, I had declined to comment, out of respect for Ethan's memory. But Susan had forced my hand. I think I'm ready to talk, I said into the phone. I told him everything about the mortgages, the debts, the auction, and how Susan had systematically tried to destroy my business since Ethan's death. Richard was silent for a moment. This is going to be explosive, he said finally. Are you sure you're ready for the fallout? I thought about all the clients Susan had scared away, the events we had lost, the employees I might have to lay off if things didn't turn around. I'm sure, I replied. It's time for the truth to come out. Just as I hung up, my phone buzzed with another text from Susan. Meet me at the house. Now, we need to talk. I smiled, gathering my things. It was time for the next phase of my plan. The Caldwell estate loomed before me, its grand Tudor architecture a testament to old money and even older pride. Susan stood on the front steps, waiting. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer suit were immaculate, as if she was about to attend a charity gala instead of confronting the woman who now owned her home. Her blue eyes burned with fury as I approached. How dare you, she hissed. This house has been in the Caldwell family for generations. I met her gaze, unshaken. And now it's mine, I replied calmly, legally purchased at auction, after your husband mortgaged it to cover his gambling debts. She flinched at the mention of her late husband's reckless financial decisions. You had no right, she spat. I had every right, I said, my voice unwavering, just like you had the right to spread lies about my business, to manipulate my clients, to try and destroy everything I built from the ground up. Susan's lips pressed into a thin line. The difference is, I continued, stepping forward, what I did was legal. I let that sink in for a moment before delivering the final blow. What you did? I tilted my head slightly. That's called tortious interference. Her face paled. She knew exactly what that meant. And for the first time since I had met Susan Caldwell, she had nothing to say. Interference and its grounds for a lawsuit. Susan's face paled slightly, but she rallied quickly. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone, pressing play on a recording. I simply shared my concerns with a few friends. If they chose to take their business elsewhere, well, that's hardly my fault. I stopped the playback and met her gaze. I have more, I said. Every email, every phone call, every canceled contract, my lawyer has it all. Susan's posture stiffened. What do you want? She demanded, her voice shaking slightly. I want you to stop interfering with my business. I want you to call every client you scared away and tell them you lied. And I want you to remember something, Susan. Ethan believed in me. He supported my dreams. He would be ashamed of what you've done. She stared at me, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. For a moment, something flickered across her face, not just anger, but fear. You're bluffing, she said finally, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. You wouldn't dare go public with any of this. It would destroy the Caldwell family name. The name you spent years telling me I wasn't worthy of? I asked, raising an eyebrow. The name you think gives you the right to destroy other people's lives? That name? I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to my recent call log. I just got off the phone with Richard Chen from the Denver Post, I said, holding up the screen for her to see. He's very interested in writing about how the great Susan Caldwell has been systematically harassing her dead son's wife. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. Try me, I said quietly. You spent months trying to destroy everything I've built. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back? Susan sank onto the mansion's front steps, suddenly looking older than her 63 years. You don't understand, she whispered. This house, it's all I have left. For a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then, I remembered everything. The cruel rumors, the manipulation, the way she had tried to break me, not just me, but anyone who dared to stand up to her. No, Susan, you don't understand. I folded my arms. I didn't buy this house to hurt you. I bought it because I knew someday you'd go too far, and I needed leverage to make you stop. She looked up at me, eyes narrowing. What are you saying? I'm saying we can make a deal. Susan's breath hitched slightly, but she forced a neutral expression. You can stay in the house, I continued, as my tenant, under certain conditions. She stared at me warily. What conditions? I sat down beside her, careful to keep my distance. First, you call every client you scared away and tell them you lied, that my business is perfectly stable and successful. Second, you stop spreading rumors about me. No more phone calls, no more concerned conversations with your friends. And if you refuse, I shrugged, then the eviction stands and Richard Chen gets his story. Susan was silent for a long time. She stared out at the carefully manicured gardens she had obsessively maintained for years. Finally, she spoke. Ethan always said you were stronger than I gave you credit for. The mention of my late husband's name sent a familiar pain through my chest. Ethan saw me for who I really was, I said quietly. You never bothered to try. She turned to look at me, really look at me, perhaps for the first time. Why did you stay? She asked. After he died, when I offered you the money. Why didn't you just take it and go? I exhaled, steady and sure. Because this is my home, I said simply. I built something here, something real, and because running away would have meant letting you win. For a fleeting moment, a ghost of a smile crossed her face. You sound like him when you talk like that, so stubborn. I smirked. He learned it from someone, I replied, thinking of all the times Ethan had told me stories about his mother's legendary determination. Susan stood up, brushing invisible dust from her designer skirt. I'll need time to make those calls. These people aren't going to be happy about being manipulated. You have until the end of the week, I said firmly. And I want to be copied on every email, included in every call. Susan nodded stiffly. And the house, I continued. Like I said, you can stay. But from now on, you pay rent to me, not to some faceless investment firm. I stepped closer, holding her gaze. And Susan, if you ever try to hurt my business again, you'll be out of here so fast your head will spin. The next few weeks were interesting, to say the least. True to her word, Susan made the calls. Some clients came back immediately apologetic and embarrassed at having been misled. Others took more convincing. But slowly, steadily, my business began to recover. More surprising than that, though, was the subtle shift in Susan's behavior. The snide comments stopped. The cold looks became less frequent. And then, one day, about a month after our confrontation, she showed up at my office unannounced. I need your help, she said, looking uncomfortable. I raised an eyebrow. With what? The garden club is hosting their annual charity gala, and our usual event planner just backed out. I stared at her, half wondering if this was some kind of trap. You want me to plan the garden club gala? She nodded stiffly. You're the best in the business, she admitted, though the words clearly pained her. Everyone says so, even, she hesitated. Even I have to admit your work is impressive. Coming from Susan Caldwell, this was practically a declaration of undying admiration. I bit back a smile. I want complete creative control, I said, no interference, no second-guessing my decisions. Fine, she agreed quickly. Too quickly. But perhaps, she added, clearing her throat, we could discuss some ideas over lunch. And that's how I found myself having weekly lunch meetings with my mother-in-law, planning what would turn out to be the most successful garden club gala in recent memory. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. Susan was still Susan, opinionated, demanding, and convinced she knew best about everything. But something had changed. There was a grudging respect now, an acknowledgement that perhaps I wasn't the gold digger she had always assumed I was. 6 months after our confrontation on the mansion steps, I sat in my office, reviewing the year's finances with Mia. We've not only recovered, she reported, grinning at the spreadsheet. We're up 30% from last year. I raised an eyebrow. That much? The garden club gala opened up a whole new market for us, she explained. I nodded, thinking about how much things had changed. Susan's connections aren't so bad, I admitted, when they're working for us instead of against us. Mia hesitated. Speaking of Susan, she reached into her desk and handed me an envelope. She left this for you this morning. I opened it. Inside was a key and a note. Olivia, the east wing of the mansion has been empty since Arthur died. It seems foolish to waste the space when you're paying ridiculous rent for that tiny office downtown. Consider this a business proposition. You can run your company from here, and I'll finally have someone to share this ridiculous house with. Susan. I stared at the note, thinking about all the times Susan had told me I didn't belong in the Caldwell family home. And now she was inviting me in. The next day, I went to the mansion to inspect the east wing. Susan was waiting. She tried to appear casual, but I could tell she was nervous. The light is good for an office, she said, leading me through the rooms, and there's plenty of space for your team. She was right. The space was perfect. High ceilings, large windows, a separate entrance for clients, but more importantly, it felt right. This was where Ethan had grown up, where we had our wedding reception, where we had planned to build our future, before fate had other ideas. Susan hesitated, then turned to me. There's one condition, she said suddenly, stopping in the doorway. This could be my new office. I tensed, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sunday dinners, Susan continued. If you're going to be working here, we should at least have dinner once a week, to discuss business, if nothing else. I looked at her, this proud, difficult woman who had caused me so much pain, yet was now, in her own way, trying to make amends. I have one condition too, I replied. No more secrets. No more games. If you have a problem with me or my business, you tell me directly. She nodded slowly. I suppose I deserve that. Yes, I agreed. You do. 2 weeks later, my company officially moved into the east wing of the Caldwell estate. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The business Susan had tried to destroy was now operating under her own roof. But something unexpected happened. As the weeks turned into months, the mansion, which had once felt cold and imposing, began to feel like home. And Susan, who had once been my greatest enemy, became, if not exactly a friend, at least a respected ally. One Sunday evening, almost a year after our confrontation, Susan and I sat in the garden after dinner. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn where Ethan and I had once planned to raise our children. "He would have loved this, you know," Susan said quietly. "Seeing you make this place your own, watching your business grow." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I think he'd be happy to see us getting along too." She hesitated for a moment, then reached over and squeezed my hand, the first time she had ever initiated physical contact. "I was wrong about you, Olivia," she admitted. "I see that now." I managed a small smile. Better late than never. Later that night, as I walked through the mansion's halls, I thought about how life takes unexpected turns. I had bought this house as a weapon, a way to fight back against Susan's cruelty. Instead, it had become a bridge, a way for two grieving women to finally understand each other. The next morning, I arrived at my office in the East Wing to find a small package on my desk. Inside was my grandmother's antique brooch, the one Susan had always claimed was a cheap copy of a Caldwell family heirloom. Tucked inside was a note. "Welcome to the family, finally." I pinned the brooch to my jacket, smiling at how things had changed. Susan had tried to destroy my business, but in doing so, she had forced us both to face some uncomfortable truths. Sometimes, the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from turning them into allies. And sometimes, just sometimes, the house you buy for revenge becomes the home you never knew you needed. Life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges our way, but I've learned that sometimes the biggest battles aren't won by fighting fire with fire. They're won by turning the page and rewriting the story in a way no one saw coming. When I first bought this house, I saw it as a weapon, a way to strike back at the woman who had tried to ruin me. I never imagined it would become a place of healing, growth, and second chances. Now, as I sit in an office I never thought I'd call my own, in a house where I was once unwelcome, I realize something. Revenge isn't the victory, transformation is. What do you think? Would you have done the same in my situation? Would you have fought back or walked away? I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, how do you handle people who try to tear you down? What would you have told me when Susan was doing everything she could to destroy my business? And now, seeing how it all played out, what advice would you give me moving forward? Most importantly, I want you to take something from my story and apply it to your own life. Maybe you've been wronged, betrayed, underestimated. Maybe someone has tried to take away what you've worked for. But I want you to remember this. You are stronger than they think. You don't have to destroy your enemies to win. You just have to rise above them. And sometimes, if you're willing to see the bigger picture, your greatest obstacles might just become the stepping stones that lead you to something greater. So tell me, what's your next step?